over here and explain it to these kids that it's very doable.
Engelson, a film producer, but they split in August 2013. They were together for 9 years and married for 2 of them.
When it comes to Meghan Markle, you'd think by now every secret was already dragged into the spotlight. The Hollywood grind, the royal scandals, the endless PR games. But just when it feels like the dust has settled, the past creeps back out, sharper than ever. And this time, it isn't a palace mole, it isn't some jealous ex-friend, and it sure isn't her half-sister Samantha tossing shade. No, this bombshell is coming from the man who actually shared a wedding band with her, Hollywood producer Trevor Engelson. And the tea he's spilling? Let's just say these aren't the kind of secrets Meghan ever wanted breathing fresh air again. Meghan has always staged her life like a movie. The underdog story, the hard-working actress, the woman who beat the odds and charmed the royal family. Every interview, every appearance, perfectly calculated. But Trevor, he's ripping that script apart. According to him, the Meghan he married back in 2011 wasn't some humble dreamer chasing opportunities. Oh no, he describes a woman whose ambition could slice through steel and whose personality shifted like quicksand depending on the crowd.
Meghan began dating in 2004 before she landed the role of...
Their love story wasn't a fairy tale romance with glass slippers. It was a high-stakes game where Meghan was always playing for the next move, the next level, the next win. They dated for 7 years before finally walking down the aisle. 7 years. That's more than enough time to know if someone is truly the one, right? Friends of Trevor swear he was absolutely hooked, falling for every bit of Meghan's charm and sparkle. But Trevor admits that behind those closed doors, warning signs were flashing like neon lights. He claims Meghan had this sharp habit of keeping score. Every single favor, every compromise, every little sacrifice. Nothing was forgotten. It was all stored away like a secret arsenal, ready to be thrown back in his face whenever it suited her. To Trevor, this didn't feel like love. It felt like he'd signed a contract where the fine print always put Meghan's career first, no matter what. And that career? It exploded when she landed her big role on Suits. To the outside world, it looked like the dream come true. Hollywood's underdog finally winning. But for Trevor, it was the unraveling. Meghan's life shifted to Toronto, while he stayed in Los Angeles, watching the distance grow wider every day.
The decision has been a surprise.
And while some couples fight to make long-distance work, Trevor says Meghan didn't just drift away. She emotionally clocked out long before the cameras stopped rolling. Meghan was diving headfirst into her new world. New friends, new connections, new doors swinging wide open. Trevor would fly out to Toronto just to see her, only to feel like an uninvited guest at her party. He was the husband, but suddenly he was treated like an outsider. And here's where it gets ice cold. When Meghan decided the marriage was over, Trevor didn't get a sit-down talk, no teary, we tried our best moment, not even a real goodbye. According to what he shared in private, Meghan ended their marriage in the most brutal way possible. She mailed back her wedding rings in an envelope. That's right, 7 years together, 2 years of marriage, and the final chapter was a package dropped in the post. No explanation, no closure, no attempt at repair. Just rings shoved in an envelope like they meant nothing. This is where Meghan's carefully polished story begins to crack wide open. For years, she sold herself as the victim, the misunderstood outsider fighting to belong. But Trevor's version? It paints a whole different picture. A woman who could be ruthless, transactional, and ready to cut people loose the moment they stopped serving her climb to the top. Insiders close to Trevor say that at first he stayed quiet because he was blindsided, humiliated, and honestly embarrassed. Hollywood is a tight circle, and Meghan was already busy rebranding herself as the activist actress with a halo over her head. If Trevor had spoken out back then, he would have looked like the bitter ex-husband nobody wanted to hear from. So he kept silent, remarried, and tried to patch up his life. But now, years later, Trevor isn't holding back anymore, and the Meghan he describes is nothing like the glamorous Duchess plastered across glossy magazine covers. His Meghan was laser-focused, almost cutthroat in her drive to climb higher and higher. She knew exactly which ladders to grab and exactly which people to step over to keep moving up. And Trevor's revelations don't stop there. He points to a chilling pattern, Meghan's habit of ghosting anyone who no longer fit the script. Once Prince Harry came into the picture, she didn't just ditch Trevor, she abandoned an entire circle of people who'd been loyal for years. College friends, Hollywood colleagues, even longtime confidants. One by one, all of them suddenly found themselves iced out like strangers.
I actually watched 5 minutes of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 episodes and...
According to Trevor, this behavior wasn't some shocking twist. It was Meghan's playbook all along. Relationships to her were strategic moves on a chessboard. If someone could raise her profile, they were welcomed in. If not, they were quietly pushed aside. And when that royal opportunity came knocking, Meghan didn't just nudge Trevor out of the way. She slammed the door shut with force. And then there's the elephant in the room. Meghan's family. For years, we've all heard her version: a fractured bond with her father, Thomas Markle Sr., and constant clashes with her half-siblings. Meghan claims she stepped away because of their toxic behavior, but Trevor's account throws a darker light on it. He suggests Meghan was already distancing herself long before the headlines, carving out space and reshaping her image without them in the picture. Trevor remembers how Meghan rarely spoke about her family in glowing terms. In fact, she often positioned herself as the shining exception, the one who rose above a family she hinted wasn't on her level. And here's the sting. Trevor realized that the very same pattern she used on her family eventually hit him too. The moment he no longer fit into Meghan's grand design, she discarded him like a script that didn't make the final cut. Cold, efficient, final, and that ruthless method tells you everything about how Meghan plays the game. Now here's where the story gets downright explosive. Friends of Trevor claim that during their marriage, Meghan kept an actual vision board, not just vague dreams, but a step-by-step roadmap for her future. On it were boxes she fully intended to check off. Marry a Hollywood producer? Check. Land a breakout acting role? Check. Surround herself with powerful, well-connected friends? Double check. And sitting right at the top, scribbled in bold letters like a mission statement, was one goal Meghan supposedly repeated over and over: be iconic. If that doesn't sound like someone running their life like a PR campaign, what does? Trevor admits he used to chuckle at it, brushing it off as Meghan just being ambitious. But looking back now, he sees the truth. It wasn't about building a marriage, a home, or even a shared life. It was about building Meghan Incorporated. And once the brand didn't need Trevor Engelson anymore, he was tossed aside like old paperwork. To make matters worse, Meghan has spent years acting like Trevor barely existed.
Very successful TV producer, which proves, and let me use that word again, which proves she was on a manhunt not just for a famous Brit, not just for a British royal.
Look closely at her interviews, her glossy features, her sit-downs. You'll rarely hear his name. It's almost as if she's trying to erase him completely from her story, wiping out the chapter that doesn't fit the iconic narrative. Meghan treats her first marriage like it was just a quick pit stop on her road to fame, but Trevor's version flips the script completely. To him, their marriage wasn't some forgettable footnote. It was the foundation of everything she built. He was the one backing her during the grind years, supporting her auditions, covering expenses, guiding her through Hollywood's ruthless maze. And yet, the second Meghan tasted real success, she rewrote the story to erase him, like he was never even part of her rise. That's Meghan's signature move, isn't it? Take the golden pieces of the past, polish them for the cameras, and bury anything that doesn't fit the fairy tale. But Trevor is showing the world that the past doesn't stay buried forever. The truths he's hinting at are cutting straight through the glossy, carefully constructed myth Meghan has worked so hard to spin. And here's where it gets wild. If you thought Meghan's dramatic exit from the royal family was shocking, her first marriage had already written the playbook for that chaos. Trevor wasn't some random Hollywood extra in her story. He was an established producer, a man who fought his way up in one of the toughest industries around. He had the contacts, the respect, the real power. And Meghan, she wasn't carrying him. She was climbing on his shoulders to reach the next level. For a while, life with Meghan looked picture perfect. Vacations in Mykonos, getaways to Mexico, glamorous parties, even brushes with the Hollywood elite.
In Mykonos, Greece, and Mexico. Kensington Palace.
But according to people who knew them back then, the cracks were already spreading beneath the surface. Meghan had a habit of being one person in private and someone entirely different in public. With Trevor, she played the sweet, grateful girlfriend. But the moment Hollywood began shining its light on her, she shifted, suddenly carrying herself like she was destined for something far greater, with Trevor starting to look less like her partner and more like a stepping stone. And here's the sting. One of the most shocking claims making rounds is that Meghan treated Trevor less like a husband and more like an accessory. Friends of Trevor noticed how he was constantly expected to orbit around her schedule, flying across the country to stand beside her at red carpet events, footing the bill for every little luxury she needed to keep up the polished image. Sure, Trevor didn't mind spoiling his wife, but he wasn't blind. He could tell the difference between someone in love with him and someone in love with the lifestyle. And according to those close to him, that was the gut punch. Behind closed doors, Meghan allegedly made it clear that she wanted more. More status, more power, more than Trevor could ever truly offer. Now, let's be clear. Trevor wasn't some broke Hollywood dreamer. He was doing well for himself, a respected producer with real credits to his name. But for Meghan, that still wasn't enough. She had her eyes fixed on something bigger, shinier, the crown jewels of Hollywood itself: fame, recognition, power, and anyone who couldn't take her there was at risk of being left behind. Which brings us to the divorce bombshell, the moment Trevor's story hits like a freight train. The way Meghan ended their marriage wasn't just unexpected, it was downright savage. There was no drawn-out conversation, no counseling, no long, tearful goodbye. According to reports, she literally mailed him her wedding rings back. Yes, mailed them, like a returned Amazon order. That's ice cold on a whole other level. Imagine building years of memories, thinking you're growing a life with someone, only for the entire marriage to end with a courier package shoved through the mailbox. And here's the twist. Trevor wasn't clueless. He knew things had grown rocky. He could see the ambition in Meghan's eyes, especially once Suits launched her into a different world. But even with all the warning signs, nothing could have prepared him for a breakup this cold, this calculated, this final. But Trevor never expected Meghan to toss him aside so casually. Friends say he was shattered, devastated, humiliated, left wondering how the woman he'd given everything to could discard him like a crumpled script draft. For Trevor, it wasn't just heartbreak, it was betrayal on a level that left scars. Fast forward to today, Trevor has mostly kept his lips sealed. He's remarried, built a new life, and is raising a family far away from Meghan's constant media circus.
For 30, when she came into the royal family, she'd had a life, she was an actress, she'd been married before, so she was pretty much clear.
But lately, whispers are spreading that he's finally letting a few truths slip. And those truths, according to insiders, rip Meghan's "poor me" victim of the press narrative to pieces. Trevor has quietly hinted at Meghan's strategic way of handling relationships. In plain terms, she always knew exactly who could help elevate her career and who couldn't. Her affection adjusted accordingly. That's not love. That's networking dressed up as romance. And if Trevor's words carry any weight, Meghan was perfecting this game long before Prince Harry ever showed up. And here's the damning part. Insiders say Trevor even noticed how Meghan rehearsed her image like she was running trial runs for a role. She wasn't just living life. She was workshopping the fairy tale she would later unleash on the world. Long before Harry, Meghan was already scripting her story, and Trevor had a front row seat to the first draft. Trevor says Meghan had a way of telling her story that always raised eyebrows, emphasized certain details, gloss over the rest. Whenever she spoke about her background or ambitions, it was almost like she was scripting her own legend. Sound familiar? That's the exact same thing people accuse her of doing in royal life. Selling herself as the underdog heroine fighting against the cold, cruel establishment. And here's where Trevor's revelations sting the most. He doesn't even need to drag Meghan with insults. The facts line up on their own. The icy, no-explanation divorce. The picture-perfect public image polished to a shine. The ruthless ambition to climb higher, no matter who got cut out along the way. When you put all those pieces together, the pattern jumps out, and it's chilling, not shocking. Think about it. Meghan's trajectory with Trevor mirrors what critics say happened with the royals. Step 1. Meet someone established, benefit from their status and connections. Step 2. Once she feels bigger, flip the narrative, reposition herself, and move on. With Trevor, she used his Hollywood credibility until she didn't need it anymore. With Harry, she entered dazzled by status and privilege, then flipped the script into being the victim of the very system she married into. And just like with Trevor, the moment the relationship no longer served her, Meghan distanced herself, rewrote the story, and turned it into her own PR victory lap. The cruel twist? Trevor may have been her most genuine chance at lasting love. He wasn't intimidated by her ambition. He supported it. He understood the industry, and by nearly every account, he truly loved her, which makes the cold ending even harder to stomach. But for Meghan, love, in its raw, messy form, was never enough. She wasn't searching for a partner. She was searching for a stage. And Trevor, successful as he was, simply wasn't grand enough to host the show she wanted to star in. That's why Trevor's voice today slices deeper than any royal commentator or tabloid critic. Because he lived it. He saw behind the curtain long before the rest of the world even knew it existed. And if his quiet revelations are to be believed, they expose a Meghan whose controversies don't look like bad luck at all, but like déjà vu, the same playbook running on repeat. Which brings us to the question that won't go away. Why now? Why is Trevor finally letting these secrets slip after years of silence? Some say it's timing. Meghan's brand is wobbling, projects are flopping, and cracks are splintering through her carefully polished image. Maybe Trevor feels vindicated. Maybe he sees the world catching up to the truth he's known all along. Or maybe he's just done being silent while history repeats itself. Whatever the reason, one thing stands out. Trevor's story matters. Because if the way Meghan treated her first husband mirrors how she's treated others in her life, then the narrative of Meghan as the eternal victim falls apart in seconds. What emerges instead is a chilling pattern: ruthless ambition, cold calculation, and a trail of discarded people left behind the moment they were no longer useful to her climb. And that's what makes Trevor's revelations devastating. Sometimes the past doesn't just haunt the present, it explains it completely. So tell me, Do you think Trevor's truth finally exposes Meghan's real story? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next bombshell.